I woke up on Thanksgiving morning to the sound of nothing. No turkey roasting, no parade blaring from the living room TV, no siblings fighting over the bathroom, just silence and an empty driveway where 4 cars used to be. I grabbed my phone to call my mom. Her number was gone. My dad's number? Gone. My brother? My sister? All of them deleted from my contacts. Overnight, like I didn't exist. Then I called my uncle, and somewhere in the background, I heard it. Ocean waves, a ukulele, and my sister's voice saying 7 words I will never forget. God, are you still talking to her? They were in Maui, all of them, on a vacation paid for with the $144,000 I had been pouring into that family's house for 6 years. And they didn't invite me. They didn't even say goodbye. That was the moment I stopped being the responsible one. That was the moment I started making a list and calling a moving truck. Before I tell you what I did next, I need to know something from you. If you found out your entire family secretly flew to Hawaii without you, using money you had been paying for years, what would you do? Would you call them out? Would you confront them when they got back? Or would you do what I did and make sure they came home to a very different house than the one they left? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if this kind of story is exactly what you needed to hear today, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because I've got more where this came from. Now, let's get into it. My name is Krista. I'm 26 years old now, but this story starts when I was 20, the year everything I thought I knew about my family turned out to be carefully constructed fiction. I grew up in what you'd call a comfortable home. 5 bedrooms, a finished basement, a 2-car garage, in a quiet suburb where everyone knew your name and assumed your business was fine. My parents, Mark and Brenda Kessler, worked hard when I was young. Dad had a solid middle management job. Mom did part-time bookkeeping. We weren't rich, but we had enough. Enough for vacations, enough for nice Christmases, enough for me to grow up thinking that stability was something you could count on. I have 3 siblings. Corbin, who's 3 years older than me and has always had that easy, charming energy that makes everyone assume he's about to do something great, even when the evidence suggests otherwise. Sloan, who is 4 years younger than me and has been my mother's favorite since approximately the moment she was born, and Rhett, the youngest, 19 years old at the time of the story, still fully in the phase of life where consequences are something that happen to other people. I was always the responsible one. I want you to understand what that phrase actually meant in our family. It didn't mean I was the oldest or the wisest. It meant I was the one who paid attention, the one who noticed when the bills were stacking up, when the refrigerator was going bad, when the gutters needed cleaning. It meant I was the one who stepped up without being asked, and somewhere along the way, that became something my family leaned on so hard it turned into exploitation, and none of us saw it clearly enough to call it what it was. Not even me. Not for a long time. I graduated from community college at 20 with an associate's degree in business administration and a plan to transfer to a 4-year university. That plan evaporated the same week my dad came home and told us he'd been demoted. Not fired, demoted. His salary was cut by almost 1/3, and suddenly the mortgage on our 5-bedroom house was more than the math could support. My mother sat me down with that look on her face, the one she reserves for moments of practiced vulnerability, and explained that they just needed a little help, temporary help, just until things stabilized. Could I possibly move back home instead of transferring? Could I contribute a little bit to the household expenses, just to help the family through a difficult season? I said yes. Of course I said yes. I was 20 years old and I loved my family. The mortgage on that house was $2,800 a month. My contribution was $2,000. My parents paid $800. We never discussed it out loud again. 6 years is a long time to pay for something and never feel like it belongs to you, but that's exactly what happened. Month after month, I deposited $2,000 into my parents' joint account. I worked full-time at a marketing firm, woke up early, stayed late, earned 2 promotions, and watched most of what I made disappear into a house where I occupied the smallest bedroom, the one with the water stain on the ceiling that nobody else wanted. While I was doing that, life continued for everyone else in ways that somehow never required their financial sacrifice. Corbin launched a startup with $50,000 of investment money that my parents somehow produced, the same year they told me they couldn't afford to keep the mortgage without my help. His startup failed within 18 months. He moved back home and hasn't paid rent since. Sloan enrolled at Westlake University, a private school with tuition that ran $38,000 a year, plus sorority dues, plus a campus apartment. All of it covered without a single conversation about whether that was feasible. When I gently suggested she might consider picking up part-time work the way I had, my mother looked at me like I'd suggested something cruel. "Your sister needs to focus on her studies," she said, as if I hadn't funded my own education while working 25 hours a week. Rhett was still in high school when this started and is now 19. A sweet kid, honestly, but one who has absorbed the family assumption that Krista handles things and there's no reason to think about it too hard. I'm not telling you I was a saint through all of this. There were moments of resentment. There were nights when I looked at my bank statement and felt something dark and heavy settle into my chest. But I told myself it was temporary, that they'd got back on their feet, that families go through hard seasons and you stick together. I told myself a lot of things. By the time Thanksgiving rolled around in my 6th year of contributing to that household, I had paid in $144,000. $144,000. Not as a loan, not with any paperwork, just as a daughter who said yes one time and never found a way to say no. I woke up at 9 a.m. on Thanksgiving morning to the sound of nothing. That might not seem significant, but if you've ever lived in a house with 4 people, you understand that complete silence at 9 a.m. on a major holiday is a red flag. Our house was never quiet. There was always the TV, always cabinet doors banging in the kitchen, always somebody's music bleeding through a wall. The silence that morning had a different texture. It wasn't peaceful. It was hollow. I sat up, listened, heard nothing. Checked my phone. No messages, no missed calls. Got up to the hallway. My siblings' doors were standing open. Their beds hadn't been slept in. I went downstairs. The kitchen was spotless and cold. No turkey thawing on the counter, no ingredients lined up for the meal we were supposedly preparing to drive to Uncle Dean's for. Just my coffee mug from the night before sitting alone in the sink. I walked to the front window and pulled back the curtain. The driveway was empty. All 4 cars, my parents' sedan, Corbin's battered Jeep, Sloan's little hatchback, and the 7-seat SUV I personally drove to the gas station the day before and filled for our road trip, were gone. Every single one. My first thought was completely irrational, some kind of emergency, everyone rushing to the hospital, someone forgot to wake me. I grabbed my phone to call my mother. Her name wasn't in my contacts. I stared at the screen like it was malfunctioning, searched for my dad. Gone. Corbin, Sloan, Rhett, all of them, wiped clean from my phone overnight. And then I remembered. The night before, Rhett had borrowed my phone. "Hey sis, can I check the score real quick? My phone's dead." He'd handed it back a few minutes later. He's 19 and not particularly subtle. He'd deleted the contact entries, but he hadn't thought to block the numbers. I still had our call history, and I knew Uncle Dean's number from memory. I dialed. 3 rings. His voice when he picked up was relaxed, cheerful, the voice of a man sitting somewhere comfortable having a perfectly good day. Uncle Dean, it's Krista. Where is everyone? There was a pause, a specific kind of pause, the one that people make when they realize they've been put in an impossible position they didn't fully agree to be in. Krista, oh, you're still home? And behind his voice, ocean waves, the distant, unmistakable sound of a ukulele. Where are you? I asked, though some part of me already knew the answer wasn't going to be his colonial house in Connecticut. Well, he said, and his voice dropped into that sheepish register people use when they're delivering bad news they had no part in creating. Well, your parents wanted a big surprise for their 30th anniversary. They all flew to Maui last night. All of them? They figured you were busy with work, he continued, sounding increasingly uncomfortable, and they didn't want you to worry about the expense. The expense. The expense of a Hawaiian vacation taken on the back of 6 years of my contributions to a mortgage that was never going to have my name on it. I stood in the kitchen of a house I had largely paid for, gripping the counter with white knuckles, and then I heard it. Sloane's voice drifting through the phone, casual as a comment about the weather. God, are you talking to her? I thought the plan was just to let her stay home. I ended the call. Here's what I want you to understand about what happened inside me in the minutes after that call ended. I did not cry. I did not throw anything. I did not call them back screaming. I did not post anything on social media. I did not text a single person. What happened was quieter and more final than any of that. Something crystallized. 6 years of payments, of sacrifice, of being the invisible foundation, all of it snapped into sudden, sharp focus, the way a picture does when someone adjusts the lens. The plan, the deliberate, orchestrated, premeditated decision to leave me behind, to delete my contacts so I couldn't reach them, to sneak out in the middle of the night. And Sloane's voice. I thought the plan was to just let her stay home, confirming that this wasn't thoughtlessness. It was a plan. I walked to my home office, the smallest bedroom, the one with the water stain, and I opened the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet. Inside, secured with a rubber band, was a 3-inch binder. I had been keeping it for years without fully understanding why. Receipts for every appliance I'd purchased, bank statements showing 6 years of $2,000 transfers, warranties registered in my name for the washer and dryer, the refrigerator, the dishwasher, the espresso machine Corbin used every single morning without ever buying coffee beans, the mesh Wi-Fi system that powered the entire house, including Corbin's job searches, mine. Every item documented, every serial number recorded, every departure from that house filmed on my phone in real time. After the movers left, I walked through what remained. The house looked like a film set after the crew has packed up. The bones were there. The walls, the floors, the built-in cabinetry, the cheap old mismatched dishes my parents had owned before I started upgrading the kitchen. But the life had been removed from it. All the comfortable, modern, functional life that I had quietly funded. Then I made more calls. Power company. I'm canceling service at 1342 Oakwood Lane effective immediately. Account under Krista Kessler. Water company. Same. Internet provider. Same. Everything I had set up, everything I paid for, everything in my name. Within 48 hours, all of it would be disconnected. They had 6 days left in Maui. When they came home, they would be walking into a dark, cold, empty house, and not one bill would have my name on it. I slept on the floor of my old room that night, on a blanket, my phone charged, my binder on the floor beside me. In the morning, I loaded the last of my bags, set my house keys on the kitchen counter next to the pile of utility bills addressed to Mark and Brenda Kessler, and walked out the door. I pulled it shut behind me. The click it made was the most satisfying sound I had heard in 6 years. 6 days later, I was sitting in my studio apartment, 400 square feet, everything mine, nothing borrowed, when my Ring doorbell app sent me a notification. I had never disconnected it. Another loose end deliberately left untied. The camera showed them pulling into the driveway in the airport shuttle. Tanned, wearing matching Aloha shirts because of course they were. My mother clutching a pineapple-shaped souvenir. My father fumbling with his keys. Sloan and Corbin dragging oversized luggage. Rhett with a plastic lei around his neck. I turned up the volume on my phone and watched. They went inside. I counted down in my head. 3, 2, 1. Mark, my mother's voice edging towards alarm, the lights aren't working. Dad's footsteps. Breaker box check? Nothing. Power was off. Then Corbin's phone flashlight sweeping through the living room, that beam stopping dead when it landed on the blank wall where the 80-inch TV used to be. Dad! His voice went up an octave. Where's the TV? The flashlight swept. Empty, empty, empty. Sloan's scream from the kitchen. The fridge is gone! Everything is gone! My father called 911. He reported a robbery in progress. Officers were dispatched to the Kessler family home to investigate a theft. And then Corbin, the tech guy, the entrepreneur, who burned through $50,000 without producing a single product, had a thought. He opened the Ring app on his phone, and there on his screen, time-stamped and in perfect high definition, was footage of his sister standing in the driveway with a clipboard while 3 men in blue uniforms carefully wrapped the family television in protective blankets. His face went the color of old chalk. She took everything, he said. Krista did this. My mother's voice broke on my name. But why would she? Because she's crazy, Sloan said. I told you she was getting weird. And my father, watching the footage, face going rigid, she can't do this. This is our house. The officers who responded to the call were professional and thorough. They assessed the situation. They noted that there was no forced entry, no signs of break-in, no damage to the property. And when my father pulled up the Ring footage and showed him his daughter calmly directing movers with a clipboard under her arm, one of them made a note and said what officers say when a situation is not what was reported. This appears to be a civil matter. My phone started ringing approximately 40 seconds after the police arrived at the house. 52 missed calls in 10 minutes. Texts from my mother's number, escalating from confused to desperate to furious. I set my phone face down, made myself a fresh cup of coffee from the espresso machine now gleaming on my counter, and watched the November sunset through my new window. They showed up at my building with my family behind them. I had been expecting this. Officer Brennan, young, professional, the name tag crisp, and his older partner knocked on my door at 4:17 p.m. and explained that my family downstairs was claiming I'd stolen their appliances and television. I invited them in, I offered coffee, and handed them the binder. Officer Brennan took it, balanced his mug, and turned the pages. He didn't say much, just read. The TV invoice, the refrigerator bill of sale, the washer and dryer warranty with my name on the registration card, the bank statements showing the monthly transfers, 6 years, $2,000 each, $144,000 total, flowing from my account into my parents'. He paused at the espresso machine receipt, flipped a few more pages. His partner leaned in and murmured something I couldn't hear. Officer Brennan closed the binder and looked at me with a different expression than he'd worn when he knocked on my door. "Everything appears to be in your name, Miss Kessler," he said. Then, "Ma'am, do you want us to file a harassment report on your behalf?" I thought about it. Genuinely thought about it. Then I said, no, that wouldn't be necessary. They nodded, finished their coffee, and went back downstairs. Through my open window, I heard my father's voice rising in outrage as Officer Brennan informed him that it was a civil matter, that his daughter had provided documentation of ownership for all items in question, and that they needed to leave the property immediately or be cited for trespassing. Car doors slammed, engines started, they left. I closed my window. 2 months after that, a manila envelope arrived at my new address. A summons to small claims court. My parents were suing me for $5,000 in emotional damages and stolen property. My mother's signature on the complaint was shaky but determined. It was their last move, and they knew it. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. Fluorescent lights, worn wooden benches. My parents sat across the aisle and did not look at me when I walked in. Corbin and Sloan had apparently not been able to be bothered to show up for a 9 a.m. hearing. My father delivered a rehearsed speech about family obligation, about the house, about how I had abandoned them without warning and stolen items that belonged to the household. He was composed. He was persuasive in the way that people who have practiced a narrative long enough can be persuasive. He talked about the emotional toll, about the hardship, about what I owed them. When he finished, the judge turned to me. I didn't say a word. I placed the binder on the bench in front of him. The sound it made when it landed, that solid, definitive thump, was the only argument I needed to make. He opened it. He read. 5 minutes passed in complete silence. My father shifted in his seat. My mother dabbed at her eyes. The judge turned pages. Then he looked up. "Mr. Kessler," he said, "these items appear to be legally purchased and owned by your daughter. Furthermore, I see evidence here that she contributed $2,000 monthly to your mortgage for 6 years while living in your home. Is that correct?" My father, "Well, yes, but—" "And you're claiming she stole property that she herself purchased?" "It was for the family," my mother interjected. "She can't just take it." The judge looked at her for a long moment. "Mrs. Kessler, I suggest you not speak out of turn." He turned back. "This case is dismissed, and Mr. Kessler, I would caution you against bringing frivolous claims before this court. There are penalties for perjury." The gavel came down. My parents left without looking at me. I gathered my binder and walked out into cold morning air. I did not look back. 4 months later, Uncle Dean called. He waited until he knew I'd be home from work. He told me the house had been foreclosed after 3 months of missed mortgage payments. My parents, my brothers, my sister, all 5 of them, were now sharing a 2-bedroom rental across town. Mark and Brenda and the master, Rhett on the couch, Sloan and Corbin sharing a room for the first time in their adult lives. Sloan had been forced to transfer out of Westlake. She was at community college now. "They're really struggling, Krista," Uncle Dean said, his voice dipping into that register that families use when they want guilt to do the work that conversation can't. "Did they ask you to call me?" A pause. "Not exactly." "Then they're not struggling enough," I said. "They'll figure it out. They're adults." I was surprised by how steady my voice was, how clean it felt to say it. A few weeks after that, a LinkedIn message appeared from Corbin. He had an interview at a tech company and wanted to know if I'd serve as a professional reference. He added, and I am not making this up, "You know how reliable I am when I put my mind to something." I clicked ignore. Then I blocked his profile. I want to tell you what my life looks like now. 400 square feet. One window that catches the morning sun at exactly the right angle, an espresso machine that I fill with my own coffee beans, a refrigerator that contains only food I chose to buy, utility bills with only my name on them, silence. But not the hollow silence of abandonment, the full, peaceful, earned silence of a life that is finally, entirely mine. People ask me if I feel guilty. Former coworkers, acquaintances who've heard pieces of the story, people who think that family obligation is something you owe unconditionally, regardless of what family does with it. They want to know if I lie awake thinking about my parents in that cramped 2-bedroom apartment, if I wonder if Sloan is okay at community college, if I regret what I did. I take a sip of my coffee when they ask. Let the richness of it sit on my tongue for a moment. And then I tell them the truth. I don't feel guilty. I feel free. And those two things are not the same thing. But for the first time in 6 years, I finally know the difference between them. $144,000, 6 years, one Thanksgiving morning, one moving truck, one binder. That's what it cost to remember who I was before I became the responsible one. And I would do it again, every single time. If this story hit close to home, if you've ever been the one who holds everyone else up while quietly sinking yourself, I want you to know you're not alone. Drop a comment, tell me your story. I'm listening, and I'll be back next week with another one.